Welcome to another edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I'm CDJ, joined by Tommy and the clean-shaven JBHuskers. Guys, how's it going?
Very good. Can we stop putting hurdles in front of this game, please?
I say let's just fast forward to next summer. I mean, it's just let's get there already.
I really thought we were going to have one show where we wouldn't have to talk about legal issues. But then Friday afternoon, we found out that the temporary restraining order that the Brandr Group wanted against EA Sports was rejected. So let's spend a couple minutes talking about that. After that, we will get into the Madden 24 gameplay blog and video, talking about, of those features mentioned, what do we think the community wants to see most in EA Sports college football? So briefly, the lawsuit, the Brandr Group wants to stop it. They feel like they need to be in on negotiations, especially where they represent the schools and the players. And part of that lawsuit, they wanted a temporary restraining order, which basically would have told EA, you cannot pursue rights of players or teams any further. Well, the judge rejected it in part, as I gather. One, they haven't actually gone after any players yet. So it's pretty tough to prove damages when you haven't actually offered any players. And the other part of it, the judge seemingly kind of smacked down their other argument, which is still, I believe, still going to be in court later on, that the Brandr Group may say that they have to be involved or legally that getting 3 or more players and their marks constitute a group arrangement. But the judge didn't really seem to go for that. So there are a lot of legal experts saying that this case may be already done and over with. Briefly, I don't know if you guys have followed the lawsuit much, because it seems like every day there's been something new this past 7 to 10 days. I mean, is it going to be over? I mean, it's one of those things that you guys said, let's just get to next summer. It seems like every day there's something new that isn't fun to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that when it comes to legal cases, at a minimum, you always try to have to protect your likeness, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's Brandr trying to protect their brand, so to speak.
Wallet,
no pun intended.
Yeah. No, yeah. But basically, they have to protect their idea that, hey, we're going to take on all of these players and we're going to do them as a team. And if you challenge that, then, we're going to have problems. So, I mean, I can understand why they're doing it, again, if nothing else, to protect themselves. But at the same time, there wasn't ever really any merit. Again, like you said, they haven't even started reaching out to players directly. I'm sure some backroom conversations have taken place here or there, but at the same time, there's no actual negotiations and contracts that are ready to be signed.
I think they're just trying to protect their wallet. They're trying to squeeze money out of nothing right now. This game still hasn't even been sold, hasn't even, like I said, haven't even been offered to any players. There's not been a pre-sale. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could pre-order this on Amazon. I don't think you can.
No, not yet.
There's not a placemaker. There's not a date. Probably as we're coming up the second week of second Tuesday of July, which is coming up. So at the time we do this recording, so maybe they're going to stick with that date, hopefully, because that's always been kind of a nice tradition. But yeah, this is ridiculous. Can we just get our game, please?
That seems to be the prevailing argument. Every time we post or retweet something about this lawsuit story, the comment always is, just give us the game. Let's just get there. We want the game. Don't mess it up for us.
Yeah.
As right now, a lot of experts saying that it probably looks good for EA, which is good news for the fans. Like you said, I respect Brandr and what they're trying to do, but I think they got the cart in front of the horse a little bit. And if anything, they might have hurt their name a little bit. Now there's a lot of people in our comments, anytime we talk about them, aren't real fond of the Brandr Group. So hopefully that doesn't haunt them for years to come. This past week, we had a developer blog and a video talking about the gameplay improvements coming to Madden NFL 24. We know that EA Sports College Football will be built on the Madden engine. If you read our comments, sometimes it's for the better, sometimes that's for the worse. I think it's a good thing. At least they have a solid base to build on. And we know they're going to, for lack of a better term, collegeify it. They're going to take it and make it a college version of the thing. We don't know what version of Madden they're starting with, though. Did they start with 22, 23, 24, one of the previous versions, and they can bring in what they want from Madden while adding their own college elements? We're going to go through a handful of items here. It's a lengthy blog and a lengthy video. I recommend everyone go watch it, go read the blog. We're not going to go through the whole thing here because it'd be quite a while. There's a lot of things added, a lot of things talked about. I'm going to go through a few that I had pulled out I think the community would be thrilled with most, and I'll let you guys talk about them as well. The first for me that really stood out, especially in the video when they showed the comparison, new AI system for blocking. You can ship block, enter and exit double team blocks, push the pile, which is handy in college. USC should have had that years ago in the game. And I thought it was also worth noting that the devs noted not use extra defensive backs against elite blockers, something the college fans have wanted for years. They wanted small teams using extra defensive backs to really get leveled when they're playing against a team that's got a lot of power blockers, a lot of big blockers in the game. And like I mentioned earlier, it was interesting to see EA Sports put up a comparison video between 23 and 24 showing the blocking, because there are times downfield on Madden where blocker would be down the field and you're running with the ball and you think, oh, he's going to lay this block, and he turns and runs the other way. Extremely frustrating, annoying, another way to put it. And interesting, in the blog, they say one way they rectified it, they made the logic simpler. The blocker's not going through as many points of logic or thinking about it. They finally just pick somebody and go. It may not always be right, but that makes way more sense than completely whiffing. Tommy, I know you played a lot of NC football back in the day. I believe Madden as well. How big is this blocking? Because I think it's probably the number one thing when I read it that stood out. Like, I sure hope college football has this blocking in it and not the Madden 22 or 23 blocking.
Yeah, no, I'm certain that whatever college football game is released next summer, it's going to have the current Madden engine. They're going to kind of be building it alongside of Madden. So Madden's going to be adding their new features like lead blocking, and NCAA is going to already have that and kind of testing it ahead of next year. So they'll have a full year of refinement that they can have before they can put it into their game. So, but no, lead blocking is critical and huge. I mean, in college football game, everything is wide open and there's lots of open blockers that are just kind of getting out in space, lead blockers that are pulling in front of them. So definitely it's something you've got to get right. And yeah, it's always been annoying in the past that you've got all your blockers lined up and then lo and behold, the guy gets right between three blockers. So yeah, long story short, it's going to be a good for the football game. It's going to need some refinement. So obviously the fact that there's going to be another year before it's actually released on college football, it's going to be all the better. And they'll also be able to tune it a little bit specifically for college football to where the little nuances that are difference between the college and the pro blocking game, they'll actually get to shine those up a little bit.
Yeah, and you mentioned the AI, which basically AI is taking over the world right now. This new AI blocking is going to be good, and if you can make if it does make a difference between who is getting blocked and who's getting who the blocker is, it's going to be great for college, especially for real life situations when you have the big school and small school. Even though the playing field is a lot more even than it used to be, the last time we had a college football game in our hands, there was a lot of those small schools really didn't have those lead athletes. So it's going to be a minor difference now as opposed to if we were talking about NCAA football 14, where it'd probably be much more of a difference, where you're probably going to be seeing USC just run right over Utah State or somebody like that. But the fact that it's simpler is good because that's a lot less that they can screw up. So yeah, I think it's gonna and then obviously they take it from Madden and then do whatever kind of tweaks you do with especially with all the different offenses that college uses as opposed to the pros, and vice versa. Pros use some systems that you don't see as much in college, so it's always good on paper. So
right, and sizzle videos, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it
always works well on sizzle videos.
It's always good on paper.
In this trailer.
I mean, I don't know how many different ways we've EA and Madden have put blocking and other things on the back of the box. So hopefully this is actually truly a next gen, as now we're getting into the meat of this generation, and a lot of games are really kind of taking the foothold of this power now that the consoles have. So hopefully this is one thing that Madden has done to kind of do that with the next generation of systems.
Well, and simpler is always better. As long as I can understand it, what it's doing, I can at least adapt and adjust based upon that. So if there's two guys and one guy's closer or more in direct path, then I know he'll take them, and I just have to move around the other guy or whatever. So yeah, I mean, simpler, I can at least understand what it's doing instead of guessing, oh, is he going to hit that guy or not?
Because at least if they miss the block, that makes sense. It's when they don't even go for it in Madden, especially 22 and 23, there's no way to justify that. I can justify a bad block or a missed block. I can't justify when he's several feet away and then just
turns
curves away. Yeah, he goes sideways
180 degrees.
Yeah, it's great. It'd be great if they're, especially if we're talking about Madden. With Madden, it'd be great if you have some bad blockers. Then you got a reason to cut them, put them on the trade block, not re-sign them, things like that. That kind of adds to, if they ever do, the promise things that franchise is supposed to have. But obviously, when it comes to now that we're looking at the college side of things, and if you have a bad blocker that's making bad decisions because he's bad, not just because it's some funky stuff in the code, hey, and then maybe, oh, guess what we're doing next on the recruiting trail? We're looking for a brand new left tackle, a brand new left guard, because this guy ain't getting the job done when we're going to the outside on those directions. So hopefully that kind of, indirectly leads to some depth for the in terms of recruiting and things like that.
One of the things is always how can they do wrong right? And right now the wrong is just completely wrong. Whereas like you mentioned, JB, if they go in and let's say you're a college team and you want to run a lot of running downfield, if your receivers can't block, like you said, bench somebody or go recruit better in that aspect.
Yep.
So at least if they're engaging, maybe we can then get to the point where we have bad blocks or bad block attempts as well.
Yep.
Another one that stood out, and this goes back to your point, JB, of things we've heard on the box before, it reminded me of something else here. Defensive AI read and react. It talks about our run defense AI will now have the ability to read repeated plays ran by the offense and react in a more realistic manner. Defenses will start to key in on repetitive offensive run plays. If a team is running the same play out of the same formation, that is a tell to the defense. Once the defense keys in on this, defenders will play their run fit and start hitting their gap as soon as the ball is snapped. This will not apply on a play action run. First thing, actually, the two things came to mind. One, isn't that adaptive AI that we had back in NCAA 10 or 11? But at the same time, I'm not going to complain because if it works like it says, and I should say, I guess the third point also, it only mentions run defense. There was no mention in the blog that I saw where there's any kind of adaptive towards passing plays. But I suppose beggars can't be choosers. I think to start off with, having this for run plays is a huge start, and I hope college football has it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it almost sounds like there's like a cheat mechanism. I mean, if you run the play too many times, then they're gonna jump off the ball faster or whatever it may be. I mean, at the same time, you got to kind of you want it to be smart. You want it to actually do things in a realistic way. You don't want them to just kind of get a sudden burst of speed that they wouldn't normally have. But at the same time, you do want variety to kind of be instilled and be part of the game. So I mean, if that's one way to do it, I suppose that's all right. But the other side is, back in NCAA 14, we had the linked plays to where you could run a dive over and over, and then all of a sudden you call the play action and it's supposed to work a little bit better. So it sounds like that's not part of this one because they say it's not going to affect play action or something like that. So I'm curious if it's just the same exact play from the same exact formation, or if you run 3 stretch plays to the right in a row, then are they going to start leaning that way or whatever? So, we'll kind of see where they go with this. It's smarter is better, but at the same time, smart for the right reasons in the right way.
Of course, the game really behind the scenes, the computer always knows your play. So basically,
of course,
what level do they want to cheat to make it realistic? And I don't think that's what they're trying to do here. But at the same time, the computer knows your plays.
You said that they're only adapting to run plays by the user.
That's what it mentioned on here, unless there's something else I did not see or misinterpreted. It talks about defensive AI read and react.
Well, and that's kind of good. That's kind of good with the AI, because then otherwise you're going to maybe with this new AI system, you could maybe it's too easy to manipulate the AI. And the run game got overpowered. So maybe this is their way of kind of balancing that.
And maybe with the pass play, if you do enough audibles, I mean, yeah, you might run the same formation, but the play is completely different.
Yeah,
maybe it is over the top, cheating.
Yeah, kind of like in Madden, that like inside stretch almost seemed to be open all the time, and
I mean, if you called a 4 verts play over and over and over, and then on the 5th time you hot route one of them to a hook or something like that, and he's going to be wide open because they're all expecting the 4 verts or whatever, I don't know. I mean, it's a delicate balance. So again, like you said, they know the play from the beginning. It's just a matter of how much do they want to tip their hat.
Another point that really I think stood out, and when I read it, I thought, boy, this could really be beneficial in college football. Quarterback AI logic has been completely overhauled to make the opposing QBs play like their real-life counterparts, as well as making it a real challenge to compete against. All of them will now use skill-based passing, but the new decision-making trait realistically determines how each QB leverages it. In the past, quarterbacks had 3 lead points to choose from. Now there are 12 possible points a quarterback will evaluate to make the big plays. This is one they talk about conservative traits. Their example is Kirk Cousins. They have the ideal trait. The example is Patrick Mahomes. And they have an aggressive trait, more of a gunslinger. The example there is Josh Allen. So it seems like they're trying to make the quarterbacks all play differently, which when you think about college football, every quarterback plays differently. On a roster, you might have several quarterbacks that all play differently. So to me, when I read this, I thought, boy, this would be a great addition for the game.
Yeah, I mean, what if and then you got guys like Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields that are going to take off more often than not. So is that going to happen with this as well? Is that something that you're going to have to look for? You really didn't have to look for that much in Madden in years past, even if it was a guy like Fields. If you're playing the CPU, that is, you really didn't have to adjust for that too often. But now, I mean, especially with all these different decision points that are added into that profile of the quarterback, it'll be interesting to see just, because Justin Fields would take off a lot, and he may tone that down now as he becomes a better passer in the NFL. But is that, it's going to be interesting to see if the game's going to enable that as well.
It is mentioned in here that quarterbacks will now use the new pathfinding technology, and the video shows almost like Pac-Man, like the little balls, the path that they go through. They will use the new pathfinding technology covered in the ball care AI section below for evading pressure and in the open field. Then they bring up your guide. This means mobile quarterbacks like Justin Fields are more true to life than ever before. So that's something that the college games, they've always had that kind of that issue or concern, is the running quarterbacks either weren't quick enough, or they just didn't run nearly enough, or they didn't call enough running plays for them. That I think though that might be the collegeification that they'll have to bring that a little bit over to. But I like the core of this. You
mentioned the Pathfinder. I mean, that technology just wasn't there. They were just going into the line or going right at it. They weren't finding the best route to take, which is interesting to see how well this plays out. If they truly are taking these routes that are completely open, that's just something that didn't exist 10 years ago. So that's why you didn't see it, because it would always get kind of snuffed out half the time.
At the end of the day, it's all a matter of making each quarterback feel different. I mean, in college football, you got 130 quarterbacks, 130 different styles of approach, and 130 different offensive coordinators that call different plays for different quarterbacks. So to me, it's all a matter of make them feel unique, make them feel different, instead of having a fast quarterback or a statue quarterback. That was basically all you had in college football in the past. So to me, just something a little bit different and nuance between them is going to go a long way.
And the game also mentions adaptive AI additions, alert logic. And it ties into what we talked about a minute ago. It's a new concept where if the CPU has a run play called, but the defense has the box loaded, the AI might audible to a pass in appropriate game scenarios. They may also change to a pass play against a weak box. So it's one of those, I think they're really keying in on, smarter AI, which is welcome, because there are times in NCAA football and in Madden where it didn't seem very smart.
Some of those things that seem obvious and should have been there years ago. And, part of it is, AI comes further along and just, the ability to put more into it on, from technology and things like that a little goes a long way. And so again, all these things are things that are overdue, but if they're coming in now, then that's going to be great. It's just going to make the college game that much better next year.
And gives them a year to get the tweaks, all the bugs figured out. So we get the clean version of it.
Right. Absolutely. There'll be other new features next year that'll be broken, but we'll at least get the ones this year will be fixed. Yeah.
Right. Another big one that stood out: fumble recoveries and onside kicks. Something that special teams have always been an issue and concern. And onside kicks, so imperative late in the game. And it was really just a terrible experience, to put it nicely, in both NCAA football and Madden. Fumble recoveries are going to be improved. Onside kicks, they've added new special teams formations and overhauled the onside kicks to get more realistic ball physics and recoveries. Thank goodness. I mean, that's something that could have had that 10 years ago, but we're not going to complain about that.
Of course, nowadays, with all the rules, the onside kicks they're barely successful in the NFL anymore. So it's really and you kind of wonder, in video games, is it going to be any different? But I don't know.
I think it's one of those things that I understand they're concerned about making it too wide or varied, because somebody's going to find a way to get the onside kick every time. And that's the last thing they want. So I feel confident saying this game's probably going to have an esports component. You don't want any online leagues or games where there's money on the line to be where somebody can run an onside at any time and get it. So I'm sure that as much as formations are important and the mechanics are important, they got to make sure it can't be exploited. And I think that's probably the other side of the coin that probably doesn't get talked about enough. But I know from a user not playing for money, I sure would have liked to see it better in the past. But right now on paper, that sounds great that that's a focus.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Any improvement is good. If it's a focus, that's great. To me, it's not the most important thing, because again, at the end of the day, you should probably only have about a 5% success rate. So how they get to that 5%, that's fine. But at the same time, it's, improvement, especially like the fumbles and things like that. If that impacts the rest of the game, then that's a great thing as well.
And they talked about with the fumbles, they have basically city versus country is how they approached it. But if there's nobody around, they're more likely to try to pick it up and go with it. Whereas if there's a lot of people around, the goal is just get on the dang ball and cover it up. Hopefully it also means the end of those dog pile videos we always get after the release of any EA football game, where somebody finds some weird scenario and probably something's bugged that is buried in the code where it looks like a rugby scrum and the ball is like a greased pig just going around. Hopefully that means the end of that. I never saw it too much personally, but when you have millions of people online, somebody's going to see something weird like that.
Yeah, it's bound to happen. It's bugs. I mean, again, like you said, million users that are touching it day one, whereas EA, they're limited on how many people can test it, and new codes getting pushed daily. So yeah, long story short, it's something small. Hopefully it fixes it, but at the same time, it's to me, it's not a huge focus.
The fifth item that stood out to me, and they put it in the gameplay, but I'll admit it's not necessarily a huge gameplay thing, but I think it's something that when we explain it's going to make a lot of sense. The Sapien technology. Long story short, it's a new skeleton, performance skeleton. The visuals in EA games in football, I think, have always been good. I think a lot of people, even if you're not a huge EA fan, realize that the game looked pretty darn good. It was the animations where they got in trouble sometimes. Sometimes you'd see quirky things. They just didn't look right. Another example they show is in the blog is a player running, and you see the skeleton, and it looks more realistic in the running movement. They also show you some new body types, how this new skeleton helps with that. And one thing in Madden that I never saw a lot of people complain about that always bothered me was on some of the player screens, especially if they had a scanned face. The scanned face looked almost like it was 1.5 times too big for their body. Well, right in the blog and the video, they show, before and after between 23 to 24. And in 23, the guy had, the massive head. And then in 24, with the improved skeleton, it finally matched the body. So it's one of those that I think we're going to see. It's a small improvement, but it's so across the board, and the game looks so good otherwise that I think it's a good way to step it up with help with these animations.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the difference between pro and college. I mean, in college, you've got so many different body types. You've got the legitimate, Georgia, Alabama linebacker that's huge and built like an NFL linebacker. But then you also have these undersized guys, 5'9", 220, that are playing, outside linebacker or something like that. So, I mean, just again, going further to make each of the players feel a little bit different and feel a little unique. I mean, if it has as big of an impact as they kind of want it to, then to me, again, just continue to enhance the look and feel of it and bring that over to college.
Last time we had a college game, I mean, just looking at almost every white guy in college, they all look like the models were not the best for what they had back then. So it's going to be it's so weird, I mean, we're 10 years ago already on this, and just everything that's evolved since then. It's going to be very cool to see kind of everything land once we start getting videos and things like that come out, hopefully I would say around bowl season. I don't know.
That's a good question. We'll talk about that in a second, JB. You're getting ahead of us here. Maybe we should almost predict what'll be in the game. But first, the final thing that stood out to me, and there's a lot in this blog. I recommend everyone go back and watch the video, read the blog. One that stood out, playbooks. For Madden NFL 24, EA is adding 70 plus new offensive formations that contain 500 new plays across all 32 NFL teams. They say it's for more variety and identity. Plays that are not only authentic to each NFL team's scheme, but also a unique component to every NFL team's offensive playbook, tailored to take advantage of all the gameplay improvements we have shared today. I have to admit, part of me, when I read that, I thought, I wonder if some of these formations are getting added in because they're adding it for college, and they realize, well, so-and-so pro team does this, so let's put this in the game. The more variety, the better. And I hope they add in balanced playbooks. That's always been a concern among the college fans, and making sure you can do everything you want in certain formations. Not that you have to get a different school's playbook to run the one play you want, even though your other playbook has that same formation. So it's one of those, interested to see what those formations are, because 70 plus seems like a lot. I didn't know the game was missing quite that many, but it's interesting to see those numbers put on paper.
I'm a huge playbooks guy. Again, love college football, love the uniqueness of it, love that, each offensive coordinator has their own style and design and everything like that. And that's what makes college football great to me. So, I mean, again, taking that a step further into college football, like you said, perfect example is maybe they were building these for NCAA and they said, hey, we've already got them cooked and ready to go. Let's bring them into Madden. So it makes sense. To me, the bigger thing in the area of playbooks, again, more plays, more formations. That's wonderful. But to me, the bigger thing is making all of the formations that have the same personnel, make them have the same plays. I mean, I shouldn't have to have one specific formation if I want a particular dive or ISO or something like that. If I have a 11 personnel or something like that, make sure that all of the formations that have 11 personnel have similar plays. Yeah, maybe a few of them have a little bit of nuance, but 90% of the plays should be in 90% of those formations. That's one thing that's always bugged me, having to have one specific formation only for this one specific play, even though it's kind of a tell because it's a slightly different formation. And so the halfback is a step back or something like that. So it kind of gives it away of what you're going to run.
Be interesting to see if maybe they're testing some NCAA stuff in Madden, because obviously they're using the Madden engine. So it's interesting to see if that's kind of some of their goals, especially once we see some of these playbooks. Maybe maybe they're just throwing in some playbooks to test it out, because some teams don't use it, but some other people want, if they use a custom playbook, are gonna kind of like some things that they may see out of that. So maybe they're kind of getting a head start with that.
I don't think we'll see the flex bone in Madden next year, but
never know.
With that, we're going to wrap it up. As I mentioned earlier, please check out that Madden 24 gameplay video and blog. A lot more in there than we got to tonight. Guys, have a great 4th of July, and our next episode is going to be a unique one. It's either going to be the best show ever or the worst show ever. I have not decided, but we have a special guest. We're going to talk about our predictions and community predictions. What's going to be in EA Sports College Football? We're a year away approximately, trying to make those guesses before EA announces. See who can call their shot, who's going to get the features right, what issues will or will not be in the game. And next week, joined by Mr. Predicto. Guys, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast.
What'd you do that for?